right, in this video, I'm going to quickly talk about something that's super essential when it comes to building assignments for distance learning. One thing that is really should be required is that you always have an attachment. So, what I mean by that is I go to the classwork tab and I click on create and I add an assignment. So, when I do this, any assignment that I have, I need to make sure that I have an attachment. I'll show you why. So when I have an attachment, it can be one that I have added, that I have a template already ready to go, whether it's a doc or a slide presentation, perfectly fine. Or I can add one on the fly. These are really important steps. You always want to give students an attachment so that way they can respond in a space right here within a Google Doc, slide presentation, or a spreadsheet, however you prefer. Regardless, I'm going to show you both ways and why it's important. I'm going to hit add from Google Drive, and I can pull up my recents here, or I can even search for a specific type. Like if I wanted presentations, I can see any recent presentations I've done, and I can even search using some text. Either way is fine. I'm going to pick one that I want to use for an assignment scenario, and I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to choose that each student gets a copy. And most of you are probably pretty familiar with this. If you have a template ready to go, works great. You make a copy for each student, and then the student gets their own copy, and then they're able to respond directly on the slide presentation or document. Works out great. Here's the big kicker. Why do we do this? Because it's going to automatically place the student's name on the document title. So that way I have access to it the whole time so I can give feedback and I can see whose it is based off the title of the document. Super important. So you might say, well, Lance, I don't need to have a template ready to go. I just want them to do a writing project, or I just want them to do a presentation, and it just needs to be a blank one. Don't send them to Google Drive and make a blank one. It doesn't work out well. Here's why. Because you might not have access to their work the entire time through that project. It's super important that you create a blank one for them. So that way, you're not having to deal with trying to contact the student and see if you can get a hold of them and make sure that they attach their work. Save yourself frustration and steps by always having access to their work. So a quick way you can do that is to just use the create button straight here and hit docs or slides, whichever one you prefer. By doing this, you determine the title of the document right away. So you're not going to have a bunch of documents that have all kinds of weird names. Okay. So you can do this, add in a title to the document. So that way you can avoid weird names. I'm going to hit the X there, click off to the side. You'll see that it still says untitled document. Don't worry, it'll still work. I'll show you what I mean. I switch it to make a copy for each student. If I save this as a draft real quick, just so that way you can see that it'll still work, it'll actually take the title when I go back to the assignment here, and you'll see that the document is actually titled Avoid Weird Names. Okay, so now when I assign this, here's what happens for the student. So now as a student, I'm going to go to the classwork tab, and you'll see that the assignment will be sitting right there. I might have to do a little refreshing here because sometimes it takes a moment for new assignments to appear. There we go. Always have an attachment. And I see right there, student name in both scenarios. Why this is important? Well, A, it puts the student name on it, and B, I have access to it the whole time. So if I go back to my teacher view and I go to the assignment itself, I hit view assignment. I can see my students here and I can see their attachments. I might have to refresh again so that way I can see those attachments. When in doubt, always refresh and you'll see, look, 2 attachments. I'll click right there on the student work and I can see I have 2 documents here. I have a document and I have the slide presentation. Doesn't mean you have to attach 2 of them. This was just for this example's sake. But during this time, I could be giving feedback to the student and letting them know how they're doing. And I have access to their work the entire time instead of waiting to the end of a project and having the student turn it in at the end. I need to have that access at all times, have their names directly on them, so that way feedback can be super effective.